So obviously, welcome to Getting Started with ScreenBuilder. I hope it's obvious enough where you're at. Welcome, of course, to TelerikNEXT. I hope you've enjoyed yourselves so far. Now, it's great to be here in Boston, of course, home of Louis C.K. and some sports teams or so, I hear. And I can't help it when I'm here in Boston. I think of Louis C.K. and what he says about Boston and the Boston accent. And Louis says, you know, it's not an accent, it's a whole city of people saying most words wrong. And then he swears a bunch, but I won't do that yet, at least not right now. And just so you know, that's as funny as this talk gets, so yeah, you're in for a real treat. Any Patriots fans here by any chance? A couple, all right. I just want you to know, as a lifelong Packer fan, I may be the only person that appreciated this moment more than you, and I apologize to any Seahawks fans in the audience as well, so, but yeah, I just had to say that. So my name is Rob Lauer, and in my role here at Telerik, I'm focused on the Telerik Platform, specifically Telerik AppBuilder, App Manager, and the Verified Plugins Marketplace. Of course, if you want to reach me after the talk, you can find me on Twitter at @RDLauer. Otherwise, definitely chase me down in the halls. I'd love to chat. Yes, I am a product manager here, and if you're asking yourself, well, what is a product manager? Well, you need to know that as a product manager, it's something we ask ourselves every day, for better or worse. My role puts me in this position as kind of a nexus between like sales, marketing, engineering, and most importantly, our customers. So on a bad day, I end up feeling a little bit like this guy from Office Space. But really, my role is about talking to customers, identifying pain points, and how we can make customers' lives easier. And just what to expect today. In the simplest terms, I'm going to talk a little bit about why we created this product we call ScreenBuilder, what inspired us to do so, and of course, focus the bulk of it on the how, with a live demonstration of some of its capabilities. All right? So I hate to break it to you, but mobile development is hard. You really can't argue this. It's 2015, which means the first iPhone was released about, 8 years ago? Now, in IT terms, that's a lifetime, but developing apps is still incredibly difficult. And we've made great strides in that time, but we've been forced on this journey of, that has included these drastically new tooling, coding styles, language options, and so on, all to support these little devices which are more difficult to use and less powerful than what we've been used to on the desktop. Now, these issues are compounded with the fact that mobile development is incredibly real all of a sudden today, right? It's an incredibly real need for most of us. So we end up bouncing around in our tooling and programming language, right? Xcode to Eclipse to Visual Studio, Objective-C to Java, C# to Swift, all to support the creation of applications that run on as many devices and form factors as possible. Now, with the Telerik Platform, we are working to dramatically simplify this for you. We embrace open standards. We aren't going to prescribe the answer to developing for a native or hybrid or mobile web, because today in 2015, there really is no right or wrong answer to this. Each app, each business case has its own set of needs, its own set of requirements. So the Telerik Platform is really the first platform that puts what an app should do before how the app should be built. And I'd be remiss if I didn't give you a brief 30-second overview of what the Telerik Platform even is, for those of you who are not familiar. The Telerik Platform is all about mobile app development, of course. It's about providing a set of integrated tools and services that put you in control of developing mobile experiences. Now, maybe that sounded a little bit too much like a sales pitch, and forgive me, but it's true, we do provide tooling and services to match every step of your app development lifecycle. So starting with prototyping or designing an app, through to coding, testing, connecting to data, measuring app performance, and managing app deployment. And also, Telerik supports over 1.5 million developers, and the fastest growing segment of this is due to the Telerik Platform. It's our fastest growing product ever. And not to restate the obvious here, but we do provide first-class support for mobile web, hybrid, and native apps. And what I want you to take away from this is that Telerik Platform equals open standards and the ability to create any experience on any device. So if that experience you need to create is mobile web, that's fantastic. The app stores didn't kill mobile web. Rather, I would argue that the responsive web is just taking off in many ways. In fact, our mobile web store is improved dramatically in 2015. And if you need to reach a mobile web, we've got it. If that experience is hybrid, that's also awesome. The Telerik Platform was born from hybrid. Since day one, we've leveraged the Cordova framework, which some of you may be familiar with. Hybrid, of course, has allowed countless developers to take advantage of their existing web-based skill set to deliver amazing apps. And really, the efficiency of delivering an app via the hybrid method is still unmatched. And finally, if that experience you want to provide is native, that's still awesome. Many of you, I think, were in here for the NativeScript talk. We did just release this open source NativeScript framework, which allows you to develop truly native apps with JavaScript and CSS. And NativeScript helps to smooth that, it is another framework I'll give you, but it does help to dramatically smooth that cross-platform path significantly, even better than Cordova has done in some ways. It also embraces open standards unlike other solutions out there. And now, anyone else remember when Christopher Walken looked like Scarlett Johansson? I just saw this on Reddit, so I had to include this in here. Okay, back to the apps we're creating. All of a sudden, we're being pressured to mobilize legacy data, right, on new form factors. So we're modernizing web apps that haven't been touched since like classic ASP was still a thing. And of course, these apps don't scale on devices. We mastered the web, at least we thought we did. But now we're on these little screens even smaller than a phone. So in a way, to me, it's like Cosby sweaters and AOL all over again. And what I mean by that is, remember in the 90s, we were developing desktop apps with VB6 and dipping our toes into the web with like Adobe PageMill, front page, whatever. It's not all that different today with mobile, unfortunately. We're pretty darn good at delivering content to a desktop browser, just like we kind of mastered delivering business apps with VB6 or whatever back in the day. But now it's mobile and the tooling is just maturing, yet the pressure ramping up is unbelievable, in the enterprise especially. And so what we're seeing, like whereas last year, enterprises had a handful of mobile apps, right? We now see estimates that in subsequent years, these same corporations are going to see a 10 to 100-fold increase in mobile app development for this ever-increasing mobile workforce they have. Now this next thing, this to me is the key difference between the early days of the web and the early days of mobile. This type of UI used to be satisfactory. And the concept of user experience didn't really matter much at all. We were still dealing with this concept of e-everything and making buttons do magical things with data. So making this leap from desktop to the web was immense, of course. But you want to see more? Here, I got to put this in there too. This is the first website I ever worked on. Total disaster. Not sure if you can see it, but there's a fancy gray drop shadow behind everything, which I was pretty proud of. It's also Netscape 2.0 enhanced, and we got a guest book as well. And it got way better next year because we added a frame for navigation. Super awesome. So fast forward to 2015. Now today users expect more. And all of a sudden we're being pressured into delivering apps on mobile devices. And not just any mobile apps though, great mobile apps. So today it's also about creating a great user experience. So even though many of us just started developing for mobile in the last few months or last few years, we have to take this monumental leap from crappy mobile app to amazing mobile app. And think about that for a second. So that's like asking me to go from that crap website I created to like a month later developing a full-blown .NET C# entity space or entity framework app, right? Which I did. That took me years, not months. So let's summarize where we're at. We're supporting more platforms, all kinds of new device sizes and types, a variety of tooling and language options, all the while creating engaging apps and engaging experiences to expose data on these itsy-bitsy little pieces of hardware. And by the way, you still need to support all those legacy apps you worked on, like that e-commerce system that runs off of Perl, that staff directory that's running on Access. So you have less time than you've ever had before to get this all done. So this sucks. So what do we need to help us? We need tools that save us time and allow us to build apps that provide a truly exceptional experience to our users. So for me, it's all about saving time, building engaging experiences. So a big part of this then is to find tooling that can take us on this journey from full code to low code to no code solutions. Less coding has to equal less wasted time these days. In the days of scaffolding the same app structure over and over and by recoding or copying and pasting or whatever have to be over. We need to start relying on tooling that we can trust to scaffold apps and generate code for us. This can't be like the front page of days past, right? And maybe this sounds a bit like a unicorn to you, at least this inflatable cat unicorn horn. And maybe no code is not a reality in 2015. However, low code is definitely a reality, and I'm here to show you that code generation tools are not what they used to be. So enter ScreenBuilder. ScreenBuilder, of course, is a new offering, part of the Telerik Platform. ScreenBuilder is a zero-code mobile app development or app scaffolding tool that leads to a low-code solution. So born from these issues of trying to create gorgeous yet functional business apps in a minimum amount of time, ScreenBuilder dramatically simplifies your app scaffolding needs. And ScreenBuilder can be broken down into 3 major sections. First is pre-wired screens. Call them pages, call them views, call them screens, I don't care. I will interchangeably use those during the demo. Whatever you want to call them, they are the representations of the screens of your app. And with the help of people exactly like yourselves, we're coming up with a list of dynamic business scenarios that we're trying to match to these screens. Now, the screens we have today contain pre-built pixel-perfect layouts to match the requirements for your business apps. For example, in ScreenBuilders today, we have screens like sign-in, registration, data list, fully customizable input forms, and soon we'll have charting options, something like this, and other ways to lay out your pages. And these can all be chained together using custom navigation that you specify. Next section is themes. I've been, of course, harping on UI and user experience being so important. Well, with the pre-built screens, we're giving you these pixel-perfect layouts. But what about theming your app? Do you want a consistent user experience across every mobile device? Or do you want a UI that corresponds to the specifications of each native OS? Well, with ScreenBuilders today, you can choose between a flat UI or a native UI. Now, going forward, we're going to expand this to include a variety of color palettes as well. And I don't want to set any expectations or promise anything today, but this is the kind of direction we want to head. We want to provide you with choices when it comes to theming, and each choice should be gorgeous. These aren't the MS Office themes of days past, right? And finally, we have data. And at the end of the day, for me, it's all about data. It's one thing to provide screens and themes, which obviously are incredibly important. But as developers and architects, we know that the rubber hits the road when it comes to data. Now, V1 of ScreenBuilder comes with options for you to directly integrate with a variety of data sources, including Telerik backend services, which in turn gives you access to SQL Server, MySQL, Oracle, and Postgres. We will also have support for OData and JSON via RESTful services, and not to mention upcoming support for Progress, OpenEdge, and Rolebase. So when it's all said and done, we believe that for many business apps, you can reduce the amount of code you write by 80%. Now, your mileage may vary, of course, but it will be significant. So less time spent plus better code. And the coolest thing is that this tool is not just for developers. Even non-developers can quickly scaffold up an app and bind data to it without touching code. And maybe that's a scary thought for some of you, but it's true. And if I'm you, I may be thinking, well, this is all fine and good, and we'll probably make for a fine demo whenever Rob stops talking, but you may also be thinking of that app you need to create. And you can come up with your head like 50 reasons why a tool like ScreenBuilder would never work for you. It might not be a perfect fit because ScreenBuilder does just enough things that are different, or your app does just enough things that are different. But then I disagree with you because the journey doesn't end at ScreenBuilder, at least not today. That's why you can take your complete ScreenBuilder project and load it up into AppBuilder to complete it. So you customize it to your heart's content, edit code, add custom plugins, do everything you've been doing with AppBuilder up to today. You can also send it back to ScreenBuilder to add new screens, send it back to AppBuilder to wire up your custom code, iterate as needed, and then publish your app. Finally, V1 of ScreenBuilder supports both hybrid and native app development. If you're more comfortable with Cordova, ScreenBuilder shouldn't preclude you from developing in that. Likewise, if you want to develop a native app, ScreenBuilder can help you perform that as well. So if this sounds too good to be true, it is not. But let me get to the heart of this talk and do a demo of ScreenBuilder for you. May the demo gods be with me here. Give me a moment as I bring up my screen here. So, if you're not familiar with the Telerik Platform yet, allow me to introduce you, please. Telerik Platform is, of course, all about creating mobile app experiences, whether those are mobile web, hybrid, or native, as I've said a few times now. We do have a web-based client, which is what I'm going to use here. Oops, you know what? I just realized you're not seeing my screen. Is there something I have to do to project it on the... if I knew what that was. I am in extend mode, yes. Do I want duplicate? Cool, there we go. So I am using a web-based client today. We do have other options for you. If you're more comfortable in Visual Studio, we have a Visual Studio extension. We have a command line interface. If you're more comfortable using like Sublime Text or something like that, we definitely have you covered. Now, so let's go ahead and create an app. Let's just get right into it. So we're going to create an app, and we're going to start from a blank template in ScreenBuilder. I'm going to choose to create a hybrid app here, and I'm going to choose to start from a blank app with ScreenBuilder. Now, apps, of course, are all about data, and so we prompt you right away to create a new backend services project with some sample data. It's pre-selected by default. I'm going to go ahead and do that. You don't have to do that. You can add your own backend services project. You can choose to not do it at all. Either way is fine with me. So let's do a TelerikNEXT demo. Create an app. Now, as my ScreenBuilder environment is initializing here, I'm going to be dropped inside of a new ScreenBuilder project, of course. And if you saw the keynote, of course, there's going to be some overlap here, just to warn you. But we are going to go a lot deeper than the keynote did. Now, the UI for ScreenBuilder is very clean, very easy to use. It doesn't need that much explanation, but I will go through it nonetheless. On the left side here, we have our app navigation. Now, this lets us go through the sections of our app construction. So from our views or our screens to navigation, the app navigation itself, managing your data and your UI themes. Now, in the middle here, we have our list of screens or views that you'll see as we build this app. We have a property pane here that changes for every view type. And on the right, we have our always available device simulator, which you can pretty much see the whole thing there. The cool thing about the device simulator, it's always available. You can use it whenever you want during the app creation process. Now let's start in the views section here. And remember, the views are the screens or the pages of our app. And we start with a default or empty view called home. We can specify the name or the ID of the view here, along with a title that shows up in app navigation. So I can just say Home 5 and hit apply, and you'll see that magically Home becomes Home 5 in the title bar there. Now, this view is simple enough, right? And this is a view that you would use if you want to extend your app with some custom code later on. But I don't want to get into that right now. I think what I'd like to do is change this to a sign-in view, because it's the natural first step of most apps most business apps is to sign in. So let's go here. Let's change the sign-in view, and first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to remove this view from app navigation, because, like in the keynote, I want to make sure that my users have to sign in or register to use the app, which seems like a pretty obvious step to do. Now, we can alter many properties on this view. I have a username and password field. I can change the label or the help text that shows up here. I also have a confirm button, which you'll see there's an action here if the password matches the username. Where do I want to send them? Well, right now, I want to send them to a data list view, but I don't have that yet, so I'm going to leave it the way it is right now. And now that I've changed this to a data list view, I can, oops, did I change it to, no, I didn't change it to a, okay, sorry. I thought I changed it to a data list view by mistake. So at this point, I'm going to create a register view. My register view, again, is quite simple. So I have some properties I can change. I can change the title. I can remove the view from navigation, of course. And one thing I didn't mention with the sign-in view is that both sign-in and register, you can see right here, they're bound to my default data provider. So I don't have to do any wiring up of my back end there with my user credentials or anything like that. It's all set up for me. I have some fields, email, username, password, and so on. Right here, I'll say if the registration is successful, I'm going to send them back to my home view. And I'll add a link to my home view just in case somebody got here by mistake. And it's bothering me that this is called Home 5, so let's change this back to sign in. Now, I think what I'd like to do here, let's go back to our sign-in view, just to make sure this is taken care of. Or no, I need my data list view first. So next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to create a data list view. And a data list view, of course, is a great way for me to expose data from my back-end service. Now, there's a lot going on with the data list view. I am going to include this in app navigation. I'm going to keep it bound to my default data provider. And I can choose a content type. So remember, a content type is kind of like a database table. In this case, I'm going to choose the activities table, or content type, I should say. And for, let's see, how about for an image field, I'm going to include for the image template, I'm going to include the picture field, and for the heading text, I'm going to include the text field, appropriately named. Now, there's a lot more going on here. So these relatively innocuous, simple-looking features at the bottom of here expose a lot of amazing functionality. So we can enable a master detail view, which kind of scaffolds up a parent-child display of data. We can also add things like pull to refresh, load on demand, which is great if you have a huge list that you need to scroll through, filtering and grouping to help manage your data as well. So I'm going to hit apply here so we can see what this is going to look like. And of course, every time I hit apply, it's going to load up data in my simulator as well. Now, I'd like to show you the rest of the view types at this point. So first thing I want to show you is the form view. Now, this is easily the most customizable of all of our views right now. And what we can do is we can add any number of form fields here. So I'm presented with the option of creating, any collection of password, text box, date inputs, toggle switches, and so on that are all presented in kind of a stack layout. So I can go through here and add a toggle and a password, which is a form that makes no sense at all, of course. But just so you can see, the UI comes up just as we would expect. Now, the other view that I can show you for V1 is the About view. It's a relatively simple view, but it provides you the ability to show an About screen for your app. So things like your name, your version, description, contact field here, some social media integrations as well. I'm going to leave all those to their defaults just so you can take a peek at how that looks like. And you can see I have my navigation here at the bottom so I can navigate between my views. Now, I think it's probably a good time at this point to take a brief look at the device simulator. So the device simulator by default is the same device simulator that is used in AppBuilder. So if you're familiar with AppBuilder, you'll be familiar with this. I can go through and choose between a variety of iOS, Android, and Windows Phone devices, along with some custom devices that when you get into Android land, you can see how important this might be. We can switch between versions of OS. I happen to be, what am I, in the iPhone 6 right now, which means I can only run on iOS 8. I can also rotate my screen if I want to see what my app's going to look like in landscape versus portrait mode. I can also refresh the current view, or I can reload the entire app from scratch if I want to. And finally, of course, I can zoom my display in and out, which is great for presentations, of course. Now, let's look at app navigation. So you saw by default I had the slide transition between my views, which is right here. I can choose different types of navigation. So I can go switch from a tab menu to a drawer if I'm developing maybe a tablet app. I'd want to use a drawer. We also have a list menu, or none at all if I want to use custom navigation. And in the keynote you probably saw, I can set an initial view on my app. So I can say, well, it makes the most sense for users to go directly to my registration view, for instance, but we'll keep it at sign in. And finally, we can choose between a variety of transition effects out of the box. Let's switch to zoom because it's super classy. So now when I navigate between this awesome zoom transition. Let's skip data for now, look at themes for a little bit. Now, whoops. Themes right now are quite simple with ScreenBuilder. As I mentioned in the slides, you can switch between a flat UI and a native UI. Since I'm simulating an iOS device, I can show you what everything looks like on iOS. So everything appears, native styling for all of my buttons and my UI controls and everything. And likewise, if I switched over here to a generic Android phone, we get a standard Android look and feel. But I'm going to switch back to iOS here. Actually, I can leave it here, but switch it back to the flat UI. So flat UI, again, is consistent UI across all your devices. Oops. Maybe I will switch back to iOS. Okay, so let's talk about data. As I mentioned, you're not limited to one database provider for app. For example, if your app supports multiple database providers, you of course need the ability to add additional ones here. We can do that by adding an additional data provider. What I'm going to do, I'm going to choose, let's choose that Northwind database again, because there's actually some nice stuff in there we can play with. So I can add as many as I need to here. And one thing I skipped over when I was adding a provider is that we support offline mode by default. This is something from Kendo UI that we're leveraging. So even if my app goes offline, I can still interact with the device just like it's in online mode. And then when I go online, all my data gets synced up. It's completely black box magical to me. I have no idea how it works. Now, one thing that we should do now, I think what I want to do is I want to show you more of our backend services really quickly, because the rest of this demo is kind of more about data. So let's go back to my app here, and I'm going to open up backend services. Now, right away, it'll be obvious that backend services is more than just about data. By default, we get a variety of usage metrics here by default. It can help you with things like user management, sending email, push notifications, managing files, delivering responsive images. Not to mention another important thing, cloud code, which I like to think of as like writing database triggers with JavaScript. So today we only care about data, so let's focus on that. And I'm going to hit the types. Remember, content types are my database tables, essentially. And so when I get into backend services, I can look at my activities content type. And of course, I can go in here and I can add data, I can edit data as much as I need. What I'm going to do, actually, I do want to be in activities. So let's do something, show off some of the power of ScreenBuilder here. I'm going to have two tabs open. One with my ScreenBuilder project open and one with my backend services open. So I'm going to go to my data list and I'm going to enable pull to refresh. So again, just a checkbox. I'm not coding anything at all. I can pull down and I can release to refresh my data. Now, just to prove that this works, I'm going to add a new item. Save that. Head back here, pull to refresh, and there's my data. Now, next up, I think, I get to this point where I'm like, I don't want to find myself down the rabbit hole with backend services because there's so much functionality I could show. One thing I do want to show, though, if you do have a legacy database, we can leverage things called data connectors, which is a way for you to connect to your remote SQL Server database. You saw Bert Collin go through this during the keynote. This is the place you do it. As of today, we support SQL Server, Oracle, MySQL, and Postgres, and that's expanding dramatically going forward. But what I'd like to do is go back to my ScreenBuilder app. There it is. So now with my data list view, I can easily switch providers. Again, this is what, I keep harping on this, but it's like I'm not touching any code. I'm switching from my default provider to my Northwind provider. I can go between, I have a few data tables loaded from my Northwind provider. I can switch over to customers. I don't have any images in there, but I can show, I can show a contact name for the heading text, and for a subheading text, I can choose, if I can scroll here, company name, hit apply, and like magic, there we go. My data shows up as I'd expect. And now here too, this is a good example of something I might want to load or enable load on demand. And when I do that, my entire data set isn't loaded at once. So as I scroll, if you catch it just right, you'll see the scroll bar expanding. Well, maybe you won't in the simulator, but oh, there, it just did it. I don't know if you saw it or not, but the data is loaded as needed as you get to the bottom of the page. So definitely a better way of efficiently displaying data. Now, what else can we do in ScreenBuilder? We do version control. So we leverage AppBuilder, which is all Git-based version control. So I can do my commits here. I can show additional information about this commit. I can revert my changes as well. Now, pretending for a moment that I'm fully satisfied with my app here in ScreenBuilder, the next step, of course, is to take this into AppBuilder. And that's why we provide a one-click button here to get in, to make any last commits and open your project into AppBuilder. And once we get this loaded up into AppBuilder, you'll see, again, I went over this in the keynote, but I want to reiterate the fact that all of your views show up in their own directory, so everything's really well organized for you. And when we get into an example view, see the code is very clean, very easy to digest. This is really not your typical code generation tool. I say that a lot, but it's very true. The code is just gorgeous that comes out of ScreenBuilder. So I'm going to go in here. Where's my sign-in view? home here. So let me run this in the simulator just so we can have a reminder of what this looks like. And I have a generic app icon there, so I'm going to go in here and I'm going to edit code. I'm going to add a new image. Right? And I probably need to upload that image before anything works. So I can add an existing file from my desktop here. And it is this Telerik logo. And only on my laptop it takes like a couple seconds for it to pull files from the desktop. I don't know why. But there we go. So I made this change. I can run this app in the simulator just like you saw it in ScreenBuilder, and my new logo will be there like magic. And now I can take this app at this point. I can click open in ScreenBuilder and bring it back up in there. I can make any changes to my app. My icon will still exist there. It's not like we're going to overwrite your code in this situation. What else can we do in AppBuilder that's important to know? There is so much could go on for hours, but probably the most important section to talk about is the properties. This is where we get into like managing icons and splash screens for your app. You get into changing the Cordova version, so we support a variety of versions of Cordova. Most importantly here are plugins, and if you're familiar with hybrid development, you'll know that plugins are kind of the bridge between your web assets and your native device features. So I can enable access to everything you see here. We even have integration with our verified plugins marketplace, which provides a host of third-party plugins, most of which are written by Eddie Verbruggen over here. Go see his session tomorrow, by the way, or today or tomorrow? Today. Go see his session this afternoon about Cordova plugins. Now, last but not least in the demo here, oops. I think my screen size is too small to, there we go. Last but not least, of course, if you want to publish your app, you need to know that you can do so within AppBuilder. We support publishing for internal deployments using Telerik App Manager. We support direct publishing to the iOS App Store along with Google Play and the Windows Phone Store. And this does mean I'm on a PC right now. I can literally publish to the iOS App Store without using a Mac, which is huge. Of course, it can enable App Manager Live Sync, which gets even better, which I hope you saw during the keynote. And in case it hasn't been obvious, I've been using ScreenBuilder to build a hybrid app. And as I mentioned early on, you can use ScreenBuilder to develop a native app as well. And the native app, of course, does leverage NativeScript, which is our open source JavaScript framework. And yes, the last thing I want to mention, ScreenBuilder is available today. If you have a Telerik Platform account, you can use it today. Otherwise, set up a free trial. You get a 30-day trial for free. So let me send back to my slides here. Is that going to work? Cool. So, what else? I hope when you start using ScreenBuilder, your mind will be blown. I think it's easy to see how ScreenBuilder can dramatically impact our app development process. We are going to be expanding it dramatically in the coming weeks and months. It's only going to get better. That is all I have for you. I don't know where I'm at on timing. I hope I'm okay. I did want to leave some time for Q&A. Again, here's my contact info. I think we have time for questions. But actually, before I forget, if you like this talk, here is the URL to fill out the survey, please, if you would. If you didn't like the talk, if you were bored, you're going to use this one, which is my boss. But that's it. Thank you so much for coming. Have a great time at the conference. Right now, and where's Vladi? I'm gonna be nailing you, Vladi. So the question was, how do you maintain the changes? If I go from ScreenBuilder to AppBuilder, make changes and go back to ScreenBuilder regenerate. What I understand right now is that changes to your markup, like the icon I added, are preserved. But Vladi, there's a point though that where changes do get overwritten right now with V1.
Okay. So if your changes are in a view which you want to change later on in ScreenBuilder and you change it really, your custom changes may be lost. But if you are changing something which is not in a file generated by ScreenBuilder, your changes will be preserved. So if you're editing something generated by ScreenBuilder, it can be lost if you're changing it back in ScreenBuilder.
And I'd say this is like the #1 thing that the team is working on fixing because it's such an obvious situation that people are going to want to maintain their changes. So yeah.
Yes.
Any other questions? Yeah.
Does the data mining support
Updates back to the remote data source?
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's all kind of wired up behind the scenes. Yeah.
Just two questions. The view screen, are we able to create our own views, a library of our own
Yeah, that's a great
templates?
question.
And the second question is on the app manager, deploying outside the app stores. Is there any issues with the app store people about doing that?
No, okay, so the first question, can you create your own views and store those? That is, again, something we are very aware that people are going to want to do. It's incredibly easy to see. You may want to create your own template for your own company. That's definitely on the roadmap going forward, so we're well aware of that. Telerik App Manager, yes. There's nothing we're doing to circumvent Apple's policies, which are awful and restrictive, but you still have to provision devices. You need to assign device IDs, unless you're using an enterprise provisioning profile. All that's compatible with App Manager, so there's no issues with Apple with that. Yeah.
What's the time frame for getting various charts, views of charts in there?
That's a good question. I'm going to send it back to my product manager, Vladi. Thanks.
Thanks. So right now we are developing our roadmap after V1, and we were concentrated on V1. And right now I don't have strict time frame. We have it even as a prototype, but can't say. We'll try to have it this year.
Yeah. Anything else, Prashant?
Support collaboration among multiple users who want to design screens collaboratively?
Why are you asking the hardest question? At this point, Vladi, you want to take this one too? I mean, I'm gonna guess, but Vladi's product manager for ScreenBuilder. He knows a lot more about it than I do. I just don't want to misspeak, so I'm gonna put him on the hot seat again. Can you get the mic back to Vladi again? Thank you.
Okay, so if I understand the question correct, actually, do you ask about the app or collaboratively built screens, only screens, not app? Both, okay. So for the app, we'll leverage the local Git, which is supported by AppBuilder. So if you are familiar with Git, you can use AppBuilder's Git, and also it's on the roadmap. We'll also use some of the other options that are available in AppBuilder, like build and deploy. So we're part of AppBuilder. We are a feature of AppBuilder. So everything which is supporting collaborative work in AppBuilder will be available in ScreenBuilder. And for about screens, we don't have any infrastructure about this, but as Rob mentioned, definitely it's on the roadmap, extensibility for screens, and it depends how you build your screens. You can use Git repo, anything, or use, again, an AppBuilder project and get it there. So again, AppBuilder.
Yeah, sure. Thanks.
With the current problem where you can, if you make customizations in AppBuilder and then bring it back to SiteBuilder or ScreenBuilder, it'll lose those customizations. Is there a way when you're migrating back and forth to exclude certain elements so that they don't get over? So
Not today, no.
So the whole thing goes back and forth. You can't selectively pick.
Yeah, so I believe that's one thing that the team is working on, like a way for you to maybe denote certain sections of code that do not get overwritten no matter what. I don't know the engineering details behind that, but it's going to be, I mean, like I said, it's such an obvious deficiency that it's something we're working on right now.
I had a question about the data connector piece.
Yeah.
Do you all plan to support easy integration with some of these big legacy enterprise systems like SAP, PeopleSoft, et cetera?
Oh man, that's a really good question. Do we have anybody in here? No, business shaking her head. I don't know the answer to that. Oh, Stefan, yeah.
Okay, so what we currently have for the data connectors is those four that Rob mentioned, but in the next version we're going to support everything that DataDirect supports. So you can go to the Progress DataDirect site and look it up all the providers that they have, and eventually all of them will end up in the platform, in ScreenBuilder and backend services.
Thank you, Stefan. Anybody else? I think that's it. Thanks so much, everybody, for coming. Enjoy lunch.